Okay, so topic 5. Now this is the only the triple content stuff. So in the brain, you have 4 main parts. The cerebral cortex, which is this area, responsible for thinking, conscious activity, IQ, and memory. Medulla, which is this area over here, unconscious activity such as heartbeat and breathing. The spinal cord connects the brain to the rest of the central nervous system and to neurons. And of course, you've got the cerebellum, which is this area over here, responsible for muscle control and sitting up. If someone was, for example, to have damaged their cerebellum, they would find it difficult to coordinate their muscles. So, for example, they would not be able to walk properly. If someone damaged their cerebral cortex, that could affect their thinking, their IQ, and even their memory, etc. Okay, now with the eye, first of all, we have to know the structure of the eye. So if you look at this diagram and you make sure that you memorize all the different points, the main thing is if you look at this sclera, a lot of people don't understand what that means. So a sclera is just literally a very fine membrane that goes around the whole eye. That is the sclera. Okay, the retina is this area at the back of the eye, and in the retina you have receptors, rods and cones. So this area of the eye is where you find the receptors. Also, the iris, which is the colorful part of the eye, these are muscles, so they will act as effectors. Okay, again, all those points mentioned over here. Again, if you look at the colorful part of the eye, which is this is known as the iris. So the iris is an effector because it's a muscle. It will contract or relax. But inside the iris, there are 2 types of muscles. You have circular muscles, and so circular muscles look like this, and you have radial muscles, which are straight lines. I should use a different color. Radial muscles, which look like that. So you've got radial muscles and circular muscles, which go around together. So you have both of those, and we'll talk about how they work in dim light and bright light. So initially, let's talk about how eyes normally work. Now look, in our lenses, all human beings have lenses that look like this. Okay, this shape is known as a convex lens, and the way it works is that the lens focuses light from an object. So if they ask you to draw a ray diagram, so let's say an object, light from an object is coming to the lens, it will focus that on to the back of the retina. So it will hit here. If it hits the back of the retina perfectly, then that's normal vision. However, we know that some people have myopia, which means they are short-sighted, so they can only see things that are close. If something's far away, they can't see that properly. And hyperopia is the opposite. Now, why does that happen? So let's look at myopia first. In myopia, there's 2 reasons. Either the eyeball is too long or the lens is too strong. So when we say too strong, we mean thick as well. So the way it works is this. In myopia, light comes in and it bends early. Okay, so there we go. That's short-sighted. A good way to remember that is it's shorter than it should be, so short-sighted. Whereas in long-sightedness, the lens is very thin or the eyeball is very short, and as a result, it focuses back to very far away. So how do we fix that? So looking at myopia, the way we can fix that is we give them a convex lens, which looks like this. I'm going to draw it over here quickly. It looks like that. That's a convex lens. So we're going to take that, put it in front of them, so in their glasses or in their contact lenses, and what that will do is that will bend the light away first a little bit. It'll bend it away, and then when it comes back to join, it should now hit the back of the eye. Now, and the other person, the person who's got hyperopia, remember their convex lens is quite weak. So we give them another convex lens to fix the problem. So we give them a convex lens like this. And what's gonna... Oh. Sorry, that was an accident. Okay, oh. I'm getting vexed now. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, yeah. So, this basically now comes a bit in, and smashes that, and it goes, there we go, just like that. Okay, so that's how you fix them. Now, moving on, how apart from lenses, we can give them contact lenses, but again, there's so you've got pros and cons for each method: contact lens, laser surgery, and replacement lens surgery. So make sure you understand them and the disadvantages as well. Okay, thermal regulation. So this is talking about how our bodies maintain our temperature. So if you start to become hot, obviously receptors pick that up, it sends it to your brain, and then your brain sends information to different parts of your body. So the first part is going to be to the sweat glands. So your sweat glands are going to release sweat. The sweat goes up, it sits on your skin, and then it takes the energy from your skin in order to evaporate. So when sweat evaporates, it's taking heat from your skin. So your skin is now cooler. You also have vasodilation. Now, with both vasodilation and vasoconstriction, there's something very important. You only talk about peripheral blood vessels, so the blood vessels that are near the skin, not the ones that are deep in your body. Those never change. It's only the ones that are near the skin that change, okay? So in vasodilation, blood vessels that come near the skin widen, so more blood can go to close to the skin. And remember, blood is hot, so it's going to radiate the heat outside. And then so hot blood comes up and the heat goes up, and cool blood, refreshing blood, enters comes back down again. So that's vasodilation. The other thing that happens is that erector muscles, so the muscles which hold up your hairs, these muscles relax, and because they relax, your hairs lie flat. And of course, hair, the main job of hair is to catch a warm layer of insulating air. So if it can't do that, then of course you won't have that warm air above your skin, and therefore you'll feel cold again. So that's why animals don't wear clothes, because they already have fur, which means they have that warm layer of air keeping them warm. Now, if you're cold, no sweating, obviously. Mistake here. It should say vasoconstriction. Okay, so vasoconstriction, which means these blood vessels constrict and less heat can now escape to the surroundings. Also, the erector muscles obviously contract, so hair stands up, so you get a layer of warm air. And something else that you do is that you shiver. Shivering is basically mini muscle contraction, and we know muscle contraction requires energy from respiration. So when you shiver, your muscles contract, that means your body respires, and we know respiration is an exothermic reaction, so that releases heat. Okay, now the kidneys, their main job is to filter urea, ions and water. Now, what is urea? Urea is basically formed from amino acids. Now, remember, amino acids come from proteins that we eat, like chicken, fish, etc. So, our body can't store excess amino acids. Unlike glucose, if we have excess glucose, our body can store that as glycogen. But if you have excess amino acids, they go to the liver, where they get deaminated. And during deamination, they get turned into ammonia. Ammonia then turns into urea. This is all happening in the blood, by the way. Ammonia turns into urea. Urea then goes to the kidneys, and the kidneys removes it from the blood and turns it into urine. And then, of course, urine comes out the body. Ions. So ions, of course, we get from food and drink. So imagine salt. If you put salt on your fish and chips, that's ions. Now, again, ions, we have to have a good balance of it. Otherwise, it will upset the osmosis of our cells. So what that means is, if there's loads of ions in the blood, then the water potential of our blood will be much lower. So water will leave our cells by osmosis and it go into the blood where most of the ions are. So our cells will shrink. And if there's not many ions in the blood, then the opposite happens. So how does ions get removed? By sweat. That's why sweat tastes a bit salty, and also urine as well. And finally, water. Water, again, we lose it through 3 ways: breathing, sweating, and urine. Okay. Now, ADH. ADH stands for anti-diuretic hormone, or you can just call it ADH. And this hormone controls water levels. So our kidneys, their main job is to determine how much water should be reabsorbed back into the blood and how much water should go out as urine. And the way it does that is by the hormone ADH. So ADH is released by the pituitary gland, which is again in the brain. Remember, it's the master gland. So it's released by the pituitary gland and it goes to the kidneys. And the way it works is this. Now, a good way to remember that is ADH, A for ADH, A for absorb. So ADH is responsible, so it tells the kidneys to absorb the water back into the blood. Okay, so if you have too much water, how does it work? Your receptors in the brain, obviously, they detect that there's too much water in your blood. It tells the coordination center, or the CNS. The CNS tells the pituitary gland to release less ADH. So less ADH means less absorbing of water. So if water does not get absorbed back into the blood, it goes out in the urine. So more urine is produced. So the urine is going to be larger volume, and also it's going to be dilute. So it's going to be much lighter in color. If you have less water, again, same thing, but this time you release more ADH. So more ADH is released, so your kidneys will reabsorb more water back into your blood. So if water gets reabsorbed, less urine is produced because all the water has gone back to the blood. So urine is going to be smaller in volume and it's going to be darker. Okay, what is dialysis? Dialysis is a setup that helps people who do not have functioning kidneys to clean their blood. And the way it works is this. So blood, it looks kind of like this, okay? So look, the blood goes out of the person's body into the machine, it gets cleaned up, and clean blood returns back to their body. So if you look at that in a bit more detail, blood comes from the person, it goes into the machine. Now, right here, the walls of the machine become semi-permeable. So in this yellow part is supposed to represent the dialysis fluid. So if you imagine that these green things represent urea, so there's urea or waste products in the person's blood, but there's none in the blood in the dialysis fluid. Over time, those products move out into the fluid, okay, and they leave the blood. So over time, this fluid will become dirty. So by dirty, what I mean that there's a buildup of waste products. Now, what could happen is if there's too much of this waste product outside, it could actually make its way back into the blood. So the dialysis fluid is continuously refreshed, and basically it keeps all the waste products keep getting removed, and this helps to ensure that waste products always leave the blood and go into the fluid. At the same time, useful stuff like glucose, for example, or ions have the same concentration in the blood and in the fluid, and this makes sure that glucose is not lost, so there's no concentration gradient for glucose to leave. Okay, so again, that's the explanation of dialysis. Now, if someone does not want to do dialysis, they can have a kidney transplant. So the advantage obviously is now you don't have to do dialysis. However, disadvantage is you get organ rejection. There could be infections during the surgery. There's a long waiting list, and also if you want to stop organ rejection, then you can take drugs called immunosuppressants, which slows down your white blood cells. So that's good because there's less organ rejection. However, the problem is that now your body's immune system will become weak. So white blood cells, since they're going to be lower, pathogens can come and infect you. So you could have other infections instead.